UFC Fight Night, Jack Hermansson taking on Sean Strickland. Welcome to our main card prediction video. We go by the name Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zan, I go by Harris, and as usual, we're giving you our fight-by-fight breakdown, fight-by-fight analysis, specifically from the betting perspective, letting you know which fights are worth the value, which fights you want to avoid, which underdog has a good shot at winning, and some parlay action towards the end of the video as well. Of course, make sure you subscribe to the Boxing MMA Picks channel. Hit the thumbs up on this video. Make sure you hit that notification bell as well. And most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. For this UFC Fight Night, Hermansson versus Strickland, aka UFC Vegas 47, we have 13 fights on the card. We covered the first 7 in our prelim video. If you have not checked that out, good time to go ahead and take a look at that one. Otherwise, we are going to cover the final 6 fights here on this main card prediction video. So for the main card, let's get started with the first fight. We have Julian Erosa taking on Steven Peterson. Julian Erosa, good win over Charles Jourdain back in September. Solid MMA stand-up at this point in his career, mixes it up pretty well with his strikes, good diversity. Good engaging style, keeps coming forward, keeps cutting the ring off, keeps cutting distance off as well. He has a good consistent pace. Wouldn't really call him a ground specialist, but he does land almost a takedown and a half per fight at 50% accuracy. So definitely have to respect that diversity within his game. And 12 of his 29 or 26 wins, I should say, are via submission, including his last fight. So definitely someone that's very capable on the ground should it get there. Pretty solid overall fighter at this point, 36 professional fights into his career. Taking on Steven Peterson. Steven Peterson is on a 2-fight win streak here. Beat Chase Hooper back in June. Active striker, throws more than one punch at a time. Solid pop in his right hand. Also seen that him use the solid right hand to the body. Will combine it with kicks. Decent grappler in his own right. Almost 2 takedowns a fight in his own right. Again, he can score points on the ground with some solid sub attempts, solid positional improvement, decent ground and pound as well. But I will keep the prediction short. I think Erosa is simply the better overall fighter here. I think he's better on the feet. I think he's just as capable on the ground. I expect Erosa to use his height advantage here. He's going to have about 3 inches in height. I expect him to use his reach advantage at almost 5 inches in reach. I expect him to use that movement and that activity to sort of have his way with Steven Peterson in this one. He has shown me some toughness, but he has shown me some vulnerability as well. Always got to be careful with a fighter with double-digit losses on their resume, but both of these fighters are pretty much that. So in some ways, it can go either way because of that, but I think Julian Erosa is the better fighter. I think the odds reflect it at minus 300. I do think minus 300 is a bit too steep, but I do feel pretty comfortable with picking Julian Erosa. So maybe this could be some parlay action for you. Julian Erosa is going to be my pick.
Yeah, I'm not that comfortable with this guy, Julian Erosa. I believe he wins the fight, but at minus 300, he's not the type of fighter to get such odds. He makes every fight look like a war. And so he's going to give his opponent a chance. And at those high odds, and it's going to be a fireball fight, punches are just flying, anyone can get hurt. And it's a real risky taking him here. For me, putting him on a parlay because of his fighting style. But yeah, this is going to be a tough fight. This is going to be a wild fight. Steven Peterson throws down. He has heart. He can take a shot. But like you're saying, Erosa is the better guy. He's going to have the better movement, and he's going to have the better counters. And I think that's going to be a big thing in this fight. He's going to land the bigger shots here. I think it's going to stay on the feet. I don't think this fight's going to the mat. I like Julian Erosa here, but for me, when it comes to betting, I think this is a dog or pass. Because Julian, or just not betting at all, because Julian Erosa is going to make this a fire fight. He can easily stick and move and likely win a fight, win a decision, but he's going to go in there and he doesn't have the best defense. So this is going to be a wild fight, but Erosa is going to land the better shots, I think, and get the win here. But Steven Peterson is definitely a live dog too.
Fight number 2, we have Tresean Gore taking on Bryan Battle. I mean, this is basically what should have been the Ultimate Fighter finale, the true Ultimate Fighter finale. If you recall, with Tresean Gore, the finale, he was supposed to be in the finale. It was supposed to be Gore versus Battle. Gore had to pull out due to a knee injury, so they got in Gilbert Urbina, who Gore already beat, to actually participate in that finale. That was back in August, of course. We saw Bryan Battle win his fight. With Tresean Gore, I mean, he stalks his opponents down, control center of the ring, good jab, good power, primarily hands. His kicks actually don't even look that good from what I saw. Doesn't look like he has that striking diversity, more so looks like a big explosive puncher from the footage I've seen from him. Surprisingly, didn't get to see as much footage as I thought I would. I know he only has 4 fights, but I didn't think it would be difficult to see all 4 of them. I only managed to catch some. So there is still some analysis that hasn't been seen from myself. But with Bryan Battle, didn't really like what I saw. I mean, we know that he won the Ultimate Fighter. We know that he beat Gilbert Urbina back in August, as I mentioned. But in that fight, Urbina was having his way early on in that fight until Bryan Battle kind of took over right at the very end. Decent movement, decently light on the feet, but I do think he's a bit slow. I think he's a decent counter puncher. I think he probably has the more diverse striking of the two. He'll kind of point fight at times, especially with those kicks. So I think his striking diversity could absolutely work to his advantage. But I think this one's really hard to accurately call. I mean, you're looking at the bigger puncher in Tresean Gore taking on the much more diverse striker in Bryan Battle. Neither of these fighters particularly impress me. I'll be honest. I think Tresean Gore maybe has more potential of the two, but neither of them are particularly impressing me at the moment. And like I said, I was really unimpressed with Bryan Battle's Ultimate Fighter win back in August. I think places where Battle left himself exposed, I think Gore is going to use those different places to his advantage. I think he's going to be able to land that big shot. I think he's going to be able to hurt Battle, whether he finishes it or not. I think those moments are going to be the difference. Maybe a knockdown, winning him the round. Maybe something that leads to the fight ending. Maybe Battle being seriously hurt and just not quite being himself throughout the remainder of the fight. So there's a lot of situations here I can see Battle catching a big shot. I think Tresean Gore is hungry to kind of prove why he should have maybe gotten that contract, and he's obviously getting that opportunity to do that over the weekend, especially on the main card. So I'm going with Tresean Gore. Not a confident pick from a perspective of betting on it, but if this was the Ultimate Fighter finale, I still would have went Gore. So this fight is happening, 5-6 months later. I'm going with Tresean Gore.
Yeah, this fight should have happened on the Ultimate Fighter. I think Gore would have been the favorite then, and but this is a tough one because when you look at Bryan Battle, he's losing a lot of these fights and somehow comes back in the 3rd round and gets it done. But I think this is a hard fight for Battle. I give Battle the activity when it comes to striking. I think he's very active. He's an active striker, so he's definitely going to be getting some points with the striking. But I think Tresean Gore's boxing is just another level. I think he has that knockout ability as well. So I could see him catching Bryan Battle. I could see him putting him away. But I like Tresean Gore here. On the Ultimate Fighter, he's shown me good takedown defense. It was hard to get him to the mat. And I think he's the much better striker. So I think he keeps it on the feet. And I think he knocks out Battle, or he outboxes him. I think he's the far better boxer here. So I'm gonna go Tresean Gore here to get it done.
Fight number 3, we have Sam Alvey taking on Phil Hawes. I won't spend much time here at all. I'm going Phil Hawes all day on this one. I think it should be a pretty easy one for him. Sam Alvey, winless in 7 fights at this point. He hasn't won a fight since June 2018. I don't even know if he's a fan favorite anymore at this point. But Alvey, you got to think he should be cut after this one. If Phil Hawes loses to Sam Alvey, then I don't know. I don't think I could ever bet on Phil Hawes again. Thinking about that disappointing loss that he had to Chris Curtis. But I mean, ultimately, we know what it is. Sam Alvey, tough vet, hit and get hit, entertain the crowd, entertain the audience, and we know Phil Hawes has scary power. He cuts the ring off well, has that stalking type of style. The stand up is cleaner, it's better, it's more dangerous. As long as he keeps himself out of compromised positions. I don't know what that would be. Maybe engaging too much, maybe overexerting himself and ending up being tired. Whatever it is, as long as Phil Hawes fights a smart game here, I think he can make it a really easy one for him. And I think he probably should go down that route and not put himself in harm's way again, especially after that disappointing loss to Chris Curtis. So I'm going Phil Hawes all day on this one. I have to think he gets the job done. I have to think if these guys fight 100 times, Phil Hawes wins at least 95 of them. So I'm going Phil Hawes minus 340. I'm not even too mad at that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Phil Hawes as well, because I actually think Sam Alvey is I think he's the worst middleweight fighter in the UFC. I think he is 100% the worst fighter in that division. But obviously Phil Hawes, he has that chin issue. So all it takes is one of those Alvey bombs, and Phil Hawes could be winning the fight in one shot. Now, when you look at that Chris Curtis knockout, Phil Hawes was looking really good against a slick boxer, and then Phil Hawes got caught. Again, the same thing happened to Brendan Allen, and Brendan Allen just outboxed Punahele Soriano prior to Chris Curtis. So we got to give this Chris Curtis guy credit that if you look at the Brendan Allen knockout, what are you going to say then, right? So you got to give Chris Curtis credit. This guy has hands. So you got to think about that when he gets his next fight versus Driscus Duplessis. But that's another day. But basically what I'm trying to say is Phil Hawes, he got knocked out. But again, the guy who knocked him out just knocked out Brendan Allen. So I think Phil Hawes should get it done. He's the far better fighter here. He looked good in his last fight until that shot. So if he keeps it, if he watches, if he defends, gets a takedown, he's the far better wrestler. Sam Alvey, I think, won't have a chance with the wrestling here. Phil Hawes has to use his IQ here. Don't get into a wild exchange with Sam Alvey. Just take him to the mat, ground him out. So Phil Hawes is my pick.
Fight number 4, we have Shavkat Rakhmonov taking on Carlston Harris. Good fight here. Two fighters that I really like in this welterweight division. Rakhmonov, we know that he beat Michel Prazeres back in June. Still undefeated, 14 wins, 0 losses. He's pretty good. Good welterweight prospect. Good on the feet. Good distance control. Good active head movement. Good footwork. Good in and out movement. Really effective calf kick. We know his stand-up is pretty calculated at this point, pretty relaxed. A lot of fakes and feints. And the hands are pretty solid too. Strong clinch, good takedown defense. He has a combat sambo background. So I've seen some good grappling from him. I've seen a strong takedown ability. I've seen good top control. Both of his UFC wins are actually via submission. So he has shown us that he's a pretty complete package as a welterweight prospect here. Taking on Carlston Harris, who's had solid wins in his UFC efforts to this point. He beat Impa Kasanganay back in September. I've seen some relentless grappling out of him. Definitely uses his long frame to his advantage. Interestingly enough, in this one, won't have those statistical advantages. So I wonder if that's going to hurt him. I've seen him trip his opponents. I've seen him drag his opponents down to the ground, kind of looking to land that takedown by any means necessary. He'll body lock all fight if he has to and sort of wait for that opening. The hands are okay, or the hands are good, I should say. He has stand up, he has some kicks, he can have some pop in his punches, but realistically, he's more of the style on the feet to kind of keep pressuring you until he can bring it to the ground, because he does usually dominate his opponents on the ground. Very interesting fight here, because again, I really like both fighters. It's going to be interesting to see Carlston Harris and his ground game and how it fares against somebody like Rakhmonov, who has that combat sambo background. I think the ground game will be the X factor and the main difference in this fight. On the feet, I think despite how dangerous Carlston Harris is, I think Rakhmonov is a lot better on the feet, a lot more technically sound, more in control, more diverse in his approach. And I think if I were to make a guess on that X factor being the ground game, I'm going to think that the advantages that Carlston Harris has, I think a lot of them are going to get nullified by Shavkat Rakhmonov's combat sambo background and some of the ability on the ground that he has shown me. So I am picking Rakhmonov here. No glaring weakness in his game. Again, I think the X factor will be the takedowns. If Harris is controlling him on the ground and I just didn't analyze this fight right, then Harris is going to have his way. But if I'm looking at the fight based on what I've seen, I think Rakhmonov's ground ability should nullify that. I think Rakhmonov is more reliable on the feet, more diverse on the feet, more sound on the feet technically, and I think and he's probably just as dangerous from a power perspective. So I think those different factors will give Rakhmonov the advantage here, and he's going to be my pick.
Yeah, this is a really good fight. I can't believe the UFC is matching up these two guys. These two guys look good in their previous two fights with the UFC, and putting these guys together at this point, I'm not sure why they're trying to shoot one down. But this is a hard fight. When I really break it down, I look at how they fight and where they're good at. It's pretty close, and Rakhmonov has a lot of hype behind him. He has a lot of hype. 87% are saying he gets it done, and I think there's a lot of hype, and I'm not sure if it's warranted yet. If you look at who Rakhmonov has fought, like I'm not sure if it's warranted at this point. I want to jump on this train because I want to see new blood in this 170-pound division. What is it, 170 or 180?
170, welterweight.
Okay. So I want to see new blood in that division because it's looking a little like it's the same thing at the top. Kamaru, Covington, Edwards, it's the same guys. And now we're getting Kamzat moving up, right? So I'd like to see new blood moving up. And the way they're pushing Shavkat, they think he's that guy that at the end of the year, he's going to be in that mix or that discussion to be the next guy to break through. And when you look at who he's fought Alex Oliveira, who was how old? And he also fought Michel Prazeres, a blown-up lightweight. So he's fought these two guys, and then he's getting all this hype. Now, before that, he's fought Thiago Verhoeven. Good win. Before that, 11-3, 10-4, 8-1, 5-2. Again, he's winning these fights and he's finishing these fights how he's supposed to. So all the credit to him. But as far as who he's fought, when you look at who Harris has fought, it's a bit different. Harris has fought the stronger fighters. Let's look. Harris is going through it right now here. So when you look at who Harris fought, he's fought Impa, Christian Aguilera. He's fought a Russian, a 17-1 Russian. Can you click on that guy? Let's see if he's just a scrub. Okay, let's see where this guy's at. So 20-2. Let's see. Let's look at his record here. He just beat a guy who was 20-3. He just beat a guy who was 12-2. And then previous to that, he lost to Carlston Harris. So he has a lot of good wins. So I think Carlston Harris at this point has fought the better guys. He obviously has already beaten one of those Eastern European type fighters, a high level one with that record without even seeing him fight. You got to think he knows what he's doing. I like Carlston Harris in this spot. He's an underdog. I'm going off the odds here, and I really think this is a 50-50 fight. I look at the grappling. I know Rakhmonov has that grappling. He has that wrestling, that sambo history. Carlston Harris is a submission machine. He has a really good anaconda, probably the best anaconda choke in the UFC. If he gets that, it's a finishing move, like Mortal Kombat. If he gets that, the fight's over. So this fight to me can go either way, but at plus 190, I'm seeing those odds at. I'm gonna roll the dice with Carlston Harris. He has shown on the feet as well. He's better than, he's a bit sloppy, he's a bit wild, but he knows what he's doing. He has good counters. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he's long. Even though the reach is saying he's the shorter guy, or his reach is shorter. The way he extends his punches, he might cover more range with his punches. So I'm gonna go Carlston Harris, and again, I think Rakhmonov. I think your guy's a little stiff when he throws those punches. So I'm gonna go Carlston Harris here. I think he might catch him, But again, I wouldn't be surprised Rakhmonov win. If he wins, I'm going to jump on the Rakhmonov train. But I'm not convinced yet, beating two older Brazilians who kind of quit in their matches. So I'm going to go with Harris here. He's getting old. He has to do it now. So Harris is my pick.
Co-main event of the evening. Let's move on to fight number 5. We have Punahele Soriano taking on Nick Maximov. Soriano, you mentioned it earlier. He had a unanimous decision loss to Brendan Allen. That was back in July, first loss of his career. 8 wins, 1 loss at this point. Southpaw has a lot of pop in that left hand. It's probably his favorite punch. It has very heavy hands, good looping punches, good combinations as well. But he does put a lot of effort. You know, he wins them. Sometimes he misses really big when he does miss. He'll include some kicks in there as well. State champion wrestler. We'll get his takedown numbers, 1.5 takedowns, almost 70% from takedown accuracy perspective. But he is a state champion wrestler in terms of his background. He has that in his back pocket. We saw signs of it going back to his Dana White Contender Series fight. We saw some signs of it looking at his debut versus Oscar Pichota, but doesn't really use it in the UFC. I would say, you know, expect him to stay on the feet. Doesn't really have that diversity in his attack. I think that's what cost him that Brendan Allen fight. But he likes to come forward. You know, expect that from him. Cardio could be a question as well, especially looking at that last fight. Mind you, it was a high-paced fight. Brendan Allen, I mean, his nickname is All In, so we know he's going to push a high pace. He showed visible signs, though. Punahele Soriano showed visible signs of slowing down about halfway through round 2. I don't think Maximov, well, maybe he can. But in terms of the pace, I don't know if the pace is repeated from that Brendan Allen fight. But if it is, again, watch out for the cardio tank of Punahele Soriano. For Nick Maximov, he won his UFC debut. That was back in September. 7-0, still an undefeated fighter. He has a strong ground game. He's going to look to take the fight to the ground by any means necessary. Strong top control, good ground and pound, good grappling good grappling as well to keep his opponents on the ground. Again, last time I checked, he was a brown belt. I don't know if he's maybe a black belt now. He trains with the Diaz brothers in terms of his grappling, in terms of his cardio as well. So expect him to be able to keep it up. But from what I saw, you know, at least in my opinion, a bit green on the feet with striking to me. I know it's been said he's worked on boxing quite a bit, at least lately. So maybe he looks very improved even going back to September till now. But from even what I saw in his last fight, the striking looked a little bit green to me. Still throws one strike at a time, and will kind of rely on shooting for the takedown as opposed to using any sort of effective attack on the feet. I think this is a very winnable fight for both fighters, though, and that's what makes this one tricky, especially looking at the odds at Punahele Soriano at -200 and Nick Maximov at +170. I think for Soriano, the biggest advantage will be his striking. I think he's better on the feet. I think he's more dangerous on the feet. I think he has that knockout power. For Nick Maximov, I think the biggest advantage, maybe not even his wrestling, but I actually think his biggest advantage will be his cardio. Although Maximov is more than likely better on the ground, I'm not sure if he's going to be able to be dominant the way he has versus other fighters. Even if you look at his last fight in his UFC debut, his opponent was stuffing some takedowns. His opponent had really bad IQ. He was a kickboxer. I forget the name. And he tried to take the fight to the ground and got reversed several times. Otherwise, I saw him stopping some takedowns. So you put Maximov up against someone who has wrestling in their back pocket. I don't know how much of that wrestling will be successful from Maximov's perspective. At least I don't think he'll be able to be dominant, like I said, the way he has versus other fighters who don't have a ground game at all. Although this fight is dangerous, I do like Soriano here, coming off of a loss. He's going to want to get that back. Unless his cardio completely drains after round 1, I don't expect it to. I think he has enough to get the job done in round 1, get the job done in round 2, and by round 3, it's too late for Maximov to turn the tides. So it almost wouldn't matter what happens there. So again, I am going to raise some caution, but at the same time, I feel pretty good about picking Punahele Soriano in this one. So -200, I'm looking at this on a parlay. Punahele Soriano is going to be my pick.
Yeah, this is a tough fight when you really look at it because for me, I give Soriano the first round, second beginning of second round to get the win here. I think after that, I think Nick Maximov, his cardio advantage, he's going to push the takedown, get him against the cage. And I can see him laying on top of him for the rest of the fight and getting a decision here. So I see Soriano already either getting it done early, or I see obviously Maximov surviving, and then as the fight goes on, middle of the second round, taking over, takedowns, grapple, and I think he's gonna have the way better cardio here. So I think Soriano needs to get it done real early here. We know he has a wrestling. He was a state champion in high school, so he definitely has a wrestling. Keep it on the feet. I'm gonna go on the side that Soriano catches him. I think Soriano has some of the heaviest hands in the middleweight division, and I think this is a easier matchup for Soriano here. Um, Nick Maximov is really poor in the striking. Anytime they're standing up in the striking realm, Nick Maximov is in danger. So I'm gonna go Soriano here to find that chin and get back in the win column.
Let's move on to our main event of the evening. We have Jack Hermansson taking on Sean Strickland. Very interesting and intriguing middleweight main event here. Jack Hermansson, I should say, he beat Edmund Shabazian back in May. That was a unanimous decision win. Close fight. Primarily a grappler wrestler style of fighter. He has a solid jab. He's a bit underrated with his combinations and his overall punching diversity, punching IQ to some degree. Decent kicks, a lot of regular usage of kicks. He'll fake the level changes, so kind of keep his opponents guessing. A bit slow in the stand-up, I'll say. Good entries for his takedowns, though. Doesn't have the highest takedown accuracy, only 36%. But I do like his entries. I like how he approaches takedowns. They come from different angles. He puts himself in a really good position to end up landing that takedown, and we see that reflect on his numbers at over 2 takedowns per fight. He is a good wrestler once he gets you down, good positional improvements, good top control, solid ground and pound as well. Taking on Sean Strickland, he is on a 5-fight win streak at this point. He beat Uriah Hall back in July. Solid striker, fights pretty tall, marches you down, good constant pressure, and pretty controlled. Never really throwing any looping punches or wasting any effort. Good jab, good counter puncher, has pretty sharp hands, and the punches definitely have some pop to them. You know, we saw his ground ability in the Brendan Allen fight. He showed some decent top position. He showed some clinch work, taking Brendan's back a few times. He has some takedown numbers to his name, right? We saw it in the Uriah Hall fight as well. 1.3 takedowns per fight, 61% accuracy. So definitely not a one-dimensional fighter by any means. And he's shown me reliable cardio, pretty reliable chin as well. This fight's interesting, though. This fight's very hard to call. I think that, you're looking at a huge striking advantage for Sean Strickland. He's more technical. I think the striking speed is better combinations, more sting on his punches as well. One big advantage for Hermansson, if we're thinking about performance on the feet, is I think about the leg kicks for Jack Hermansson. Brendan Allen was able to use that calf kick very effectively against Sean Strickland, just based on how Sean Strickland fights. He was actually able to compromise Sean Strickland's leg and compromise his movement as a result. Unfortunately for Brendan Allen, it was right around the exact same time that Sean Strickland's accumulation of punches did their damage, and the fight ended shortly after. But for Hermansson, in a 5-round setting, that could be his equalizer in terms of a performance on the feet. One interesting thing that I want to bring up, and you kind of coined, or maybe I'm coining the term for you, but you brought this up in the Dustin Poirier versus Charles Oliveira fight, and I'm going to call it the Poirier effect. I think the Poirier effect exists in this fight, and what I mean by that is I ask myself, when is the last time Sean Strickland has faced someone with a legitimately strong ground game? Because if you look at who he's fought, I mean, we know Brendan Allen on paper does, but we know Brendan Allen likes to stand. Marshman's just not at the same level. Jotko, not quite. Uriah Hall, not quite. We're looking at who he's fighting, And obviously, you think about Kamaru Usman, much different fighter, much different weight class, obviously, but and several years ago. So of course, Sean Strickland has improved, but Sean Strickland still fights tall. It allowed for very easy entries for Usman. It allowed Usman to, not have a hard time bringing the fight to the ground. Able to retain that top control. I'm not comparing Jack Hermansson to Kamaru Usman. I don't even know how relevant that fight is in predicting a fight in 2022. But I think about that, and I think about Jack Hermansson in a 5-round setting, potentially using that wrestling to his advantage, using Sean Strickland's fighting style against him. Now, I am rambling a bit here, but I say all of that to say this. Be careful with this fight. We see Sean Strickland at -210. We see Jack Hermansson at +175. This could have trap written all over it. We know Strickland has the momentum. He's been talking a lot. He's on a 5-fight win streak. The crowd seems to like him at this point, especially with the winning streak he's been on. And he actually might be the more well-rounded fighter on paper. But I think that Hermansson can find a way to pull this one out, like he was able to versus Edmund Shabazian. Somewhat debatable result, but nonetheless, he has the W on paper. I think the takedown entries and the ground control time could be two differences for him in this fight. The 5-round setting is going to be interesting. I don't know who it favors. It might favor Sean Strickland because of cardio that we know he has. It might favor Jack Hermansson if the wrestling is effective. So in a lot of ways, a lot of question marks in this fight. I don't exactly know what's going to happen. But I'm feeling the underdog for some reason. I am feeling Jack Hermansson in this fight. I think he's going to kind of stop the hype that's going on with Sean Strickland. And I think it's going to be the wrestling that makes the difference. So I'm going Jack Hermansson. I'm going with the underdog.
Yeah, I'm 100% going with Sean Strickland in this fight here. I think Sean Strickland has underrated wrestling. I think in this fight we're gonna see. I think Hermansson's pretty weak, like physically. He was tossed around like a ragdoll by Khamzat Chimaev in the in that wrestling match they had. So he was tossed around. It was a friendly match, so it's not gonna be on the record. But yeah, he was tossed around. And I know Chimaev is the better wrestler, so I expected him to win that wrestling match. But the way he won just told me that Hermansson is really not that strong. And all Strickland needs to do is keep this on the feet. And I think he's gonna hurt Hermansson. I think this is a safe parlay piece. I really like Strickland in this spot here. And I'm not sure how Hermansson gets it done. Strickland has good cardio, good takedown defense. Court McGee, he's fought Court McGee. That's a wrestler. Brendan Allen, yeah, he went through a striking match with Soriano, but that was only because Soriano had that high school wrestling, and Brendan Allen knew that it would be really hard to get this to the mat, so he kept it striking. But Brendan Allen is a grappler wrestler first, striker, whatever after. So he kept those fights on the feet. He's dealt with this. He's dealt with wrestlers. Yeah, he lost to Usman. But when you look at Hermansson, he has a hard time with sprawl and brawl guys. When you look at his record here, a lot of his losses are against guys that they sprawl and brawl. Marvin Vettori, Jared Cannonier. So these are guys that kept it on the feet enough and hurt him. And I think, I really think Sean Strickland here can do the same thing. I think he is actually a better sprawl and brawler than some of those guys. So I'm going to go with Sean Strickland here to get it done, to do the same thing, keep it on the feet. Because I think when they're standing, I think Hermansson, he doesn't like to get hit. He looks really uncomfortable in the striking exchanges. I see Sean Strickland easily getting this done. Sean Strickland is my pick here.
Let's take it to Vegas. At that point, let's consider the main card, of course, and let's talk some underdog action from an underdog perspective. On the main card, who again, we have Stephen Peterson, we have Bryan Battle, we have Sam Alvey, we have Carlston Harris, we have Nick Maximov, and we have
Carlston Harris. But again, I wouldn't really bet to say, but I definitely won't bet Shavkat because I think that's a 50-50 fight.
All right, so some good value there. If you're thinking about it from a 50-50 perspective, Carlston Harris is a plus 175. For my underdog pick, I'm sticking to it. I'm going to stick with Jack Hermansson. Sort of the same idea here, though. I wouldn't bet it, but I do think he has a shot. I think he has a somewhat of a legitimate path here, and he is a plus 175 as well. In terms of favorites or parlay pieces, who are you considering?
If we're looking at just the main card, I'll go Phil Hawes, Sean Strickland, and just main card. How much does that pay?
That would pay 85% return.
Yeah, I want everyone to win money, man. Let's just do that. Let's get a win here.
So let's focus on getting a win. $100 will return 185. For our bigger bettors, $250 will return 464. That would be pretty solid. In terms of some parlay action that I'm looking at on the main card, I am going to echo Phil Hawes. And I know there's some caution here, and this will actually have the same payout. But I am going to go with Shavkat Rakhmonov. I think he gets the job done here. I think Harris is a very stiff test, but I think Rakhmonov is able to pull it off. Again, this will also pay a 1.85 or an 85% return. So $100 will return 185. Again, for our bigger bettors, $250 will return 464. So let's officially sign off there. Of course, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you've enjoyed this content. Hit the thumbs up on the video, hit the notification bell as well. And most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments below. Let us know how you feel about our parlay picks, about our underdog picks. Let us know who your underdog is. Let us know just how you feel about this card in general. Is this one of the weaker cards? Is this one of the stronger cards? Is this an underrated card? How do you feel about it? We want to hear from you in the comments below. But we are going to sign off on that note. He goes by the name of Zan. I go by the name of Harris. We are Boxing MMA Picks. And we just concluded our UFC Fight Night, Jack Hermansson versus Sean Strickland main card prediction video. So in our usual Boxing MMA Picks fashion, let's get this money.
Let's do it.